So I call it apathy creep. And when you are really depleted, when your reserves are really low, you start on the outside letting go of things like the gym. You're just like, oh man, I can't get to the gym anymore. Whatever, next week, next month. And you start letting things go on the outside. You're like, that small group, I don't want to go to that small group anymore. Hun, can we let's take a break from that. And the apathy creep starts on the outside where it looks understandable. It looks permissible, maybe even wise. Some of these choices may be wise. Okay. But then the apathy creep starts working in, and you find that you're not making dinner anymore. Like you're getting a lot of takeout or just skipping family meals. It starts working into like the epicenter of your life. But what it's after, the epicenter, is I'm too tired to pray. I'm too tired to fight back. I'm too tired to do anything about this. I'll get back to God. Of course, I love God, but I don't want to pray right now. I don't want to worship. I don't want to go to church tomorrow. It's that. And this is what he's after. He's after the epicenter.
Friends and sons, welcome back to the Being Sons podcast. That's John Eldredge. Many of you know him as the author of this incredibly insightful book on the male human soul, Wild at Heart. Since then, he's written a dozen books. All of them have been useful to me and to my family. They've been incredibly encouraging and insightful. And he has established himself as one of the premier voices for men to listen to. He's a voice of great reason. He's got a prophetic voice, a wonderful man. I'm thankful to know him personally, and I'm thankful that this is his third time to visit us on this podcast. What we're going to be talking about now is his most recent book, which was just released last week, Resilient, Restoring Your Weary Soul in These Turbulent Times. Why are the hearts of men failing these days? Are we living in turbulent times? How does Jesus describe these times? Is your soul weary? What do we do with our weary souls? We're going to be discussing these things along with other questions like, are we living at the end of the age? How are we supposed to live then? What provision does God have for us? What are we supposed to do in terms of preparing? What are we preparing for? What's healthy prepping? What's unhealthy prepping? What do we do with our dreams, and how do we help shepherd the dreams of our kids? Incredibly important topics. I'm so thankful for this conversation for me personally, and I invite you to join us for part one of this two-part conversation with John Eldredge. Sons, welcome back to the Being Sons podcast. We are privileged to be having a conversation with John Eldredge, who around our home, I call you Papa John. That's what that's what my son Bear and I talk to you about. It just feels so intimate because we're passing books back and forth, talking about you all the time and the ways that you've fathered us. And John, thankful for your coming on and having a conversation about this really good new work that you have put together. I'm almost all the way through it twice now. I was handed a little bit of an early copy, but there are chapters and portions of this that I've probably read 3 or 4 or 5 times. So thank you. It has really met my heart. It has met the needs of my mind in a very, very timely way. And I'm hoping that over the course of this conversation, we can convince some others that this is something that would be really worthwhile for them to dig into. But before we go into that, can I just ask you a couple of fun questions?
Yeah, you bet.
All right. First question. If you were given 5-minute head start to do a kingdom land grab in the coming kingdom, and you could take off and you could pick some piece of geography on planet Earth and say, this is where I would choose to rule as a lower K king for eternity, at least my center of headquarters. Is there something that comes to mind for you?
If you'd asked me that 30 years ago, I would have said the Tetons. I would have tried to grab the whole Jackson Hole area. If you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I would have said the North Shore of Kauai. But it's not just where we want to be, it's what we want to be about.
Mm-hmm.
And so that changes that. I love the Tetons, I love the North Shore, but that's Sabbath, that's play.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about, the fulfilling our destiny in the coming kingdom, there's loads of Sabbath, loads of play, but there's stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's and I have some sort of spiritual authority to Ireland.
Mm.
And it has partly to do with my heritage. It has partly to do with some kind of kingdom assignment. But I think that's where I'd go, because I think that's what I'm supposed to do.
That's fitting with your name too, of course, that God's
Yeah.
given you. One of the names, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What about you? Where would you go?
I've been several places. I'm privileged to have seen some really beautiful parts of the world, but I don't think anything's made me fall in love with its geography like Utah and the wildness of it, like Moab and Canyonlands, Arches. I mean, everywhere I went, I just felt like crying every time I left. And when I pulled into the crossroads at Moab after planning this trip for months, my heart was just overwhelmed, and it just kind
Yes.
of kept ratcheting up. It never disappointed. So I don't know. I've been to Norway and Central America. I'm about to go there again on a trip, but just nothing has captured my heart like the beauty of
Oh,
that
right
landscape.
on.
Yeah.
I love that landscape. Yeah,
Mm.
we've done loads of trips out there.
Yeah, so fun. Okay, another question. What's something you couldn't do or wouldn't want to do without Stacy?
Couldn't do or wouldn't want to do without Stace. Um, I honestly think I would say this demanding moment right now, this demanding moment, like, we've been entrusted with a thing called Wild at Heart, and a ministry that has a lot of influence in really unique places around the world, and it sets up a lot of challenges. It sets up a lot of tests of character, and I don't just mean like the high grade moral stuff. I mean relationships, people, tricky situations, opportunities that sound really influential, but we're probably actually not supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
All that, like the day to day, and then just prayers. Like, I just got back from this fly fishing trip with my son, my youngest son, because he graduated from grad school, and it was kind of a big hurrah for Luke. I didn't sleep well on that trip, and it's not just because we were out, fly fishing our eyeballs out, um, but it's because praying with Stacy is more powerful than praying by myself. And it's just, it's 30, I don't know where we're at, 38 years now of aligning together with Jesus. Yeah, I'm just super grateful for her partnership and what we're doing right here, right now on the earth.
Do you find that you're learning a lot from each other just in conversations at night around dinner and
Uh-huh.
stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we balance each other really well. You do marry your opposite. It's just true.
Yeah.
And we we balance each other really well. So therefore we come away with a better perspective, whether it's of our kids or of our work, or, just about anything, everything.
Mm. Good. Thank you. Thank you. It's good.
Yeah.
It's awesome to hear stories husbands and wives working together, especially in this hour, because I find the same thing with me and Heather. We are having conversations that are very necessary, and the little petty things that were easy to focus on in the past, we're, having the ability to push them aside a bit more, focus on bigger things. So anyway, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Oh, well done.
Yeah.
Well done, guys. That's really good.
Okay. So what is the story of this book, Resilient? I assume that you and God and your relationship with one another, there's a birthing conception story. So tell us about this book right here.
Yeah. I wanted to get out of this book so bad. I asked him if I could get out of this book, if I could not do it. And the why, everybody knows the why. It's the last 2 years of crazy. We're exhausted. People's tanks are low. Folks are looking for relief right now, not major projects.
Yeah.
And the last time you and I were chatting about Get Your Life Back. And that was a book that I wrote because before the pandemic, before all of the madness, the politics, the high octane tension, hatred in the world, prior to all that, we were talking about how do you care for the soul in a life like this, in an hour like this. We were talking about the pace of life and the amount of media, and and then on top of that, we go in for a couple big scoops of global pandemic. It's global trauma is what it is. And so it was during that, but it was last year, I had to write this book. I have to show up and fulfill an obligation to my publisher and commitments. And I kept asking Jesus, please, can I get out of this? And he says, no, hang in there. I'm with you. Just hang in there, Tiger. One chapter at a time. And I mean, it's amazing, Jay. I've been around this fight for a long time, but I could not identify what I was under. And what I was under was just a full tilt pushback from the enemy of, don't write this, back off, eject. Because now that it's out, and now that 30 days to Resilient, which we'll talk about, which is the pause out kind of version of this experience, people are texting me and saying, holy cow, man, like really mature people, like good folks texting me going, I had no idea what I was under. I knew something was wrong. I couldn't name it. And you've named it for me, and you've shown me a way back to wellness and to Jesus. So the book was born out of a profound concern of what's happening to the human heart now, post-pandemic, because the world is in global denial. Everybody's acting like, hey, what are you talking about, man? You can travel now. You can go to concerts. Life's good. We're back, And I'm like, people, that is full tilt delusional. It's classic post-trauma behavior. You pretend, and then you rush out for relief. You drink a little more than you used to drink. You eat a little more than you used to eat. You're just looking for relief wherever you can get it. And, your PA looks a little more pretty than she used to look. And I mean, all that stuff, right? So I wrote it out of a profound concern that God's people are going to get clobbered from living on very, very low reserves and doing nothing about it.
That word reserves really rings a bell with me, because I hear there are nations right now that are energy starved and everything, and what they're doing is they're dipping into their national reserves to meet today's needs and what will happen when. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't need to take sides and all this, around
Yeah.
what's going on in Eastern Europe. But folks, like, you take a weary population, a weary humanity, and then you put them through more and yeah, inflation. I mean, diesel is 550 right now in Colorado. It's just so you've got economic. I thought our buddy John Dale made a fascinating observation the other day. He said, people made it through the pandemic because the world did its best to stabilize the economy. They just poured loads and loads of money into rent relief,
Yeah.
debt forgiveness, all that stuff, right? Like unemployment checks and all that. But this time around, we're not getting that really. And so there it is, like dipping into national reserves, and then what?
Mm-hmm.
And tacos and the beach isn't going to do it. I know everybody thinks, no, I just need to get to the beach. I just need some tacos. I'm going to be fine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
guys, you got to be a lot more smart right now.
Yeah. What has been the impact on you personally? I know you go into it some in your book, but just your story.
Well, I'll put it all out there. Um, I first began to notice simply the mental fragmentation. It was just really bizarre. I'm like, I'd get on email and I couldn't remember why. Like, who
Mm.
was I gonna? Yeah, I pick up my phone and I honestly couldn't remember who I was going to text. Uh, all kinds of stuff like that. Just a sense, a loss of a sense of time. Is it Wednesday? Is it Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing. Like, are we? Is it early June? Is it late June? I began to notice that and go, whoa, John, like something's going on here. Now, these are trauma symptoms. This is classic trauma symptoms. But I didn't feel like I was traumatized by the pandemic. I felt like we lived pretty well through it. I felt like um, anyway, I began to watch these symptoms and I'm like, babe, we're going to bed at 8 o'clock. Like, why are we exhausted once the day is done? Like, I've got enough to get through the day still, but I don't have enough in the evening for anything else. And so I began to watch some of these symptoms, and I'm like, holy cow, I think that I lived really well through the last several years, practicing everything you and I have talked about, soul
Mm-hmm.
care and intimacy with God and prayer and all that stuff. It still had an impact. I was still clobbered. Um, and then I began to really notice the reach for relief, the reach for relief. I just want to drink. And I'm fine with alcohol. I don't think it's a big deal, but I don't actually drink that much.
Mm.
It's a glass of wine with friends at dinner, the toast of champagne at a wedding or something. I just don't drink that much. But I noticed I was turning to it. I was
Mm.
turning to food a lot. Um, and then then it's the trips, right? You're talking about Norway. I'm talking about the North Shore. I'm starting to fantasize about trips
Mm.
and when can we get away? And all I need is a really good vacation. So I was looking at there was this profound reach for relief that had nothing to do with God. Like, I wasn't talking to God about any of this. But then the thing that really began to, so okay, anyway, I'll explain my story and then I'll explain what I think's going on. So then I started having these experiences of, I would wake up in the morning and I would I would say to myself, am I still a Christian? Like, do I still believe all this stuff? And and that's when I just went, whoa, 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 something else is happening. Something
Yeah.
else is going on. And and so the first stages of what I was describing was the classic effects of trauma. and then low reserves. Because, you know, when you go through anything like this, you have a child, you get a new job, you move, you know, you go pursue grad school, you tap into your reserves to rise to life's big challenges, right? Everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all just tapped into our reserves in a very serious way. And I can feel my reserves are pretty severely depleted. And one of the ways I notice this is I don't have grace for irritating people anymore. Like, you know, the guy that gets in the 15 items or less line at the grocery and his cart's full and he's got like 30 things. I used to be able to go, maybe he's having a bad day. You know, maybe his mom's got cancer and he's got to try and get groceries for the family. I don't know. You know, like, let it go, John. I got nothing for that guy now. I'm like, no grace at all. I'm pissed. So I'm looking at all that low reserve stuff. And then Jesus starts showing me this deeper thing. The enemy is pouncing on this stuff. He's pouncing on our vulnerable condition.
Yeah.
He's pouncing on mine.
Yeah.
The story I'm telling you is my story. He's pounced on it with this unbelief, apathy. You know, we'll get deeper into this probably if you want to in the conversation, but the book of Daniel, as he describes what the enemy is going to do at the end of the age, one of the things he says is he will wear the saints out. He will simply wear out the people of God. And I'm like, whoa, that is way too close to home. I've been living in it. I've been living under it and battling it and battling it. Like once you turn to fight it, then it gets really mad. You know, while it can work along quietly in the background of your life, as you slowly succumb to it, this is true of anything, but this is particularly true of this stuff right now. As soon as you turn to fight it, then you're like, whoa, you know, there's a grizzly bear in the living room. Like, this thing is real. And so now I've been very, very aware of depleted reserves, trauma symptoms, and the enemy trying to bring in something like a loss of faith, a loss of heart. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And the reason I asked the question, because I've been listening to your podcasts, which have been super helpful. You know, I've been on board with the resources that you've been putting out, but you know, for those who may be listening to this but haven't heard those things, these symptoms are very real. And even as you're describing them, I think you're describing them in greater detail than maybe I've heard on any individual resource that you've created. And what scares me is just that sense of coldness that I feel in myself, you know, which is one of the symptoms of humanity in the coming days. And it's like, it's inviting me. I think it's God's invitation to wake up. And, you know, I want to read from, you know, the Olivet discourse a little bit here to let you move on it. But yeah, this has been scary. I've seen a loss of creativity, a loss of dreaming. I have at times doubted my salvation as well. Like, is this real? Even a year or two ago, I felt really called to be doing what I'm doing right now. But now it's hard for me on some days to muster the encouragement.
Yes.
And that can get, it can be difficult to muster the energy to enter into a conversation or into something that used to be very easy. But then once I'm there, it's like the Spirit and the anointing hit again. It's there. I love it. Oh yes, this is what I'm made for. But it is, it's a slugfest from day to day.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And so thank you for, you know, your vulnerability to that. One of the things that has hit me profoundly is I am just not near as strong as I thought that I was. It's a lot of shame. When this thing first happened, I got on a call with a bunch of other like-minded, like-hearted men, and our first thought was, we are like racehorses. We've been prepared for this moment for all of our lives, you know, and, you know, we're using the Lord of the Rings and the Star Wars, you know, imagery. Well, those things have not faded away, but I'm worn out now, because of it. And there's a lot of shame. Like, gosh, I thought I would last a lot longer. So there's obviously a different strategy to maintaining resilience and protecting and guarding your heart than I knew. And I think that's one of the rich invitations that, unfortunately, I need that gift a whole lot more than I thought. So, and you described another question I have is, what do you see has been the impact on the church as a whole? But can you answer that a little bit as well? What have you seen from your position?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not just the world, but I think the church as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, Jay. How do we get at this? So the June 20th and the June 27th podcasts on the Wild at Heart podcast are going to be really good because I pulled in my own team to have these conversations, and I was pretty shocked at what I discovered among really mature people. These are folks who don't make dumb
Mm-hmm.
choices. They live well, they live wisely, they have good families, good marriages. I was in a deep life in God, and I was pretty shocked and saddened by what I heard on how they are doing and how things are going now, that we're year 3. It's post pandemic in many ways. We are past it for the most part, but we're not. It's an auto accident. When you're in an auto accident, man, you're the adrenaline surge. You can rip a door off. Like people, get out of the car. They're okay. They're able to call the 911. They get the car towed away and all that. But then it's later, and sometimes it's much later. They go, "Holy cow, my back is killing me. Like, I think I broke something." Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like there's the immediate and there's the aftermath. We're in the aftermath now, folks. And it's not like it just all goes away, because we all believe in a bigger story. There's more going on here, than just humanity recovering from a time of global trauma. The enemy of the human soul, Satan, and his forces have engineered this moment. And it's not really that hard to figure out. I mean, you wear people down and take them out. It's like pretty
Mm-hmm.
basic.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm getting around to, but what about the church? Why does the church seem to be, in some ways, doing less well than folks who don't love God, follow God, try and serve others and intervene and make a difference in the world, and fight what's wrong and do what's right? Like, because it's Psalm 73, by the way, that where he's looking at the world and he's like, why are these people prospering? I don't get it. Why are your people so hammered? I don't get it. Um, but it's because we're in the last stages, and however you want to think about that, folks. Like, I'm not saying that tomorrow Jesus Christ is coming back. He could. Scripture says you're supposed to live like he could. But I'm saying we are in the final stages of the Great War, and war in its last stages, if you kind of look at how wars end, it is ugly. They don't end gently. They end violently. And so this figure that Daniel warns about, Jesus warns about, Paul warns about, however you want to understand this figure called desolation, the one who causes desolation is what Daniel calls him. There is a kind of desolation that's trying to get into the human heart, and particularly the heart of the believer. And and again, here's another way of noticing it. So I call it apathy creep. And when you are really depleted, when your reserves are really low, you start on the outside letting go of things like the gym. You're just like, oh man, I can't get to the gym anymore. Whatever, next week, next month. And you start letting things go on the outside. You're like, that small group, I don't want to go to that small group anymore. Hun, let's take a break from that. And the apathy creep starts on the outside where it looks understandable. It looks permissible, maybe even wise. Some of these choices may be wise. Okay. But then the apathy creep starts working in, and you find that you're not making dinner anymore. Like you're getting a lot of takeout or just skipping family meals. It starts working into like the epicenter of your life. But what it's after, the epicenter, is I'm too tired to pray. I'm too tired to fight back. I'm too tired to do anything about this. I'll get back to God. Of course, I love God, but I don't want to pray right now. I don't want to worship. I don't want to go to church tomorrow. It's that. And this is what he's after. He's after the epicenter. When the weariness or apathy or lethargy creep gets into the vine and the branch, and the branch loses connection with the vine, and then we're done. Like we're toast. We're history. Like you lose your vital connection with Jesus. You just unplugged from life, and now you're running completely on your reserves, which are really, really low. So I don't think the church is doing great, because the church is at this point that we're describing here, but most of them, they aren't naming it. No one's helping them understand it. And understand, do not let that apathy creep reach the epicenter. Like you can quit the gym. Do not quit prayer. Do not quit your life in God,
And I think in the church, many are still not aware of the larger story. Many are still not aware that there's an enemy. And, for a while in shock, you kind of just shake your head and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I don't know that the world's wrestling with those questions as much, because it's bad theology is like worse than almost no theology in many cases,
Yes. Yeah. I'm watching my neighbor, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't listen to your podcast, so I'm going to get away with this.
Okay.
I'm watching my neighbor, like Jay. His main thing. This is a committed Christian guy. His main thing is waxing his new car.
Oh, yeah.
He's out there all the time with the vacuum and washing it. Yeah, I mean it's a nice white new car. It's a really cool car. But I'm looking at his life because he recently retired, and as a pretty young guy, and I'm looking at going, this is your life now, like small story. So he's not going to notice the apathy creep until it hits the epicenter, and well after that, because he's not in the fight. He's almost clueless. He's waxing his car, which is a fine thing, okay, but as the main thing, like it looks like it's kind of his main thing that he does now.
Yeah,
let's take care of his car.
Yeah,
that's a small story. That's a guy who,
For my neighbors, it's their yard.
Yeah,
make it pristine. And I understand that it feels good to be outside, and it feels good to have the sun on your back, and in 3 hours, I can take something that looks messy and I can make it immaculate. And there's some real joy in that. And I think there's a thin place where you can really, it can be a worshipful experience. Yeah. But yeah, I've got a neighbor. I've just been trying to love them, in partnership with Jesus, talking about Jesus over the last several years. And they're totally aware of what's going on. They're even aware that there appears to be some sort of a plan behind it all, And they'll talk the political solution route, which, and I'll just introduce another idea, hey, well, Jesus said some things about this. Have you read, this or that? And they're like, no, I went through that years ago, or I grew up in the Jesus movement, and I've been hearing
Yeah.
this my whole life, and they'll just walk away. But I just
Yes.
keep trying to plant the seeds. But
Yeah.
all of us in our neighborhood are dealing in their yards in some different way with it. Another
Yes.
guy goes and he just plays basketball.
Yep.
That's his release.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to say, folks, as you listen to this right now, as you listen to Jay and I, if this sounds a little fringe, if this seems like it's a little overblown, call me in 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You'll see.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see. Call me in 6 months, man. Go give that a try. Take care of your yard.
Yeah.
And but we are living on our reserves, and our reserves are severely depleted. And without a deep connection to God, that is like your daily, without a nourishing connection. I don't just mean church attendance and quiet time. A connection with the living God that is healing and nourishing your soul. Without that, in richer ways than you have experienced in the past, you will finish burning through your reserves, and your life will begin to break apart.
I agree. Who wants to hear it? But that's the truth.
Just shooting straight, like that. Yeah. Just do the math. You can't, you can't live on, if this gets really bad and Russia keeps, cutting off the oil and yada, 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 and countries try and live entirely on their reserves, like that doesn't work. Like, and they're racing to try and find other global solutions, but it's a good analogy of that's a short-term fix.
Mm-hmm. So in Matthew and in Luke, when Jesus is talking about the signs of the end of the times, and I would encourage you, if you have not gone to read that recently, that's what the Lord told me to go and read probably 4 years ago. And that, I'd read it as a kid, and, John, when I read it as a kid, I was fascinated by it. And I thought, man, like, wouldn't that be exciting, but wouldn't it suck to live at that time? I'm sure that would never happen in our time. We're talking about wars and rumors of wars and famines, worldwide earthquakes, signs, strange signs in the sun, moon, and stars, deception being one of the largest evidences of it. And I just think deception's like everywhere. John, I'm watching all the Star Wars with my 18-year-old daughter. Her idea. I watched the first 3 Star Wars, and the Lord was just saying, it's all right there. All that political deception, all the undergirding that takes place over a long period of time to get everybody in exactly the right spot so that its vulnerability is exposed, and it's just mind-blowing. So anyway, if anybody wants to kind of take a different look at where we are and how we got there, you can go look at, episode 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars.
Yes.
So he goes through this long list here. Don't let anyone mislead you. And then he comes to the end. And this is what you've addressed, so well. This is obviously the passion and the heart behind your book. Watch out. Don't let your hearts be dulled by carousing and drunkenness and by the worries of this life. Don't let that day catch you unaware, like a trap, for that day will come upon everyone living on the earth. Keep alert at all times and pray that you might be strong enough, or in other versions, counted worthy. They don't seem, I don't know, I haven't prayed too much about those two.
Oh, I can help you with that today.
Okay.
Yeah.
But pray that you might be strong enough or counted worthy to escape these coming horrors and stand before the Son of Man. And in your book, you refer to this as the strength that prevails.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, father us. What do we as sons, what do we need to be about in this hour?
Yes, yes. So you don't have to believe it's the end of the age
Mm-hmm.
to understand that humanity is not well, the world is not well, and living on your reserves is not a good long-term plan. I mean, it's not a good long-term financial plan. It's not a good long-term plan for a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
but it certainly is not a good long-term plan for your soul, your humanity, your life with God. So, Katischuo is the Greek word there. Pray that you may be strong enough. It's Katischuo. It's only used twice in the New Testament. And Jesus is the speaker both times, once in Luke, the passage you just read, once in Matthew. And in the Matthew passage, it's interesting. He's talking about the church, and he says the gates of hell will not overcome it. Katischuo. It's a combative strength. It's an overcoming strength. It literally means to prevail against someone who is trying to be stronger than you, and you prove to be stronger than them. To prevail over, to prevail against, to overcome. It's an overcoming strength.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus urges us to ask for it, which is so kind and so orienting. He's like, look, as the story begins to accelerate towards its climax, even if you think it's a couple hundred years away, folks, you're in that moment. Like in terms of human history, like this is it. The story, the hatred in the world, the violence, the human trafficking. I mean, just evil is just so overblown in this hour, and just no flaunting. It's no longer hidden.
Yeah, good word.
Okay. So he says, look, an hour like that is extremely draining. Ask me for strength. And that is such good advice. Ask him for strength. Ask him for the strength that prevails. And then the whole vine and branch and the whole sort of spiritual practices thing down through the ages is there are things we can do to align ourselves with God to better receive that strength.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say, oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, great podcast, guys. Okay, Lord, I do. I ask you for this. I ask you for strength. I ask you for conquering strength, overcoming strength. And then that's the only thing you do? I don't think that's going to work. You put yourself into alignment with God in order to receive it, and to receive it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Like this, we are leaky. To be a human being is to leak. Like
Mm.
people tell you how much they love you or what a great job you did. 3 days later, that's gone.
Yeah.
You don't remember that encouraging word. You don't remember that wonderful birthday you had. It's gone. And so we ask for the strength that prevails, and we put ourselves in position to receive.